Welcome everyone to a regular budget committee meeting. March 19th, 2024. I'll call the meeting to order. We have, I think 4 is a quorum, correct, Joe? So at this point, unless we've got Colin or Kitty zooming in, we won't be able to vote on anything that's discussed tonight, including minutes. So we'll proceed on. Next up, Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Joe, any adjustments to the agenda?
None, other than if you'd like to move the fire chief up to the top, I'm sure he'd appreciate it.
Of course we can do that.
I appreciate it. I have to hit the IGA before setting.
Of course, of course.
I am under orders.
All right, okay, so, yeah, I just to continue with the housekeeping, there are no adjustments to the agenda except to bring the fire chief up to the top. Conflict of interest disclosure. If at any point during the discussion you have a conflict of interest, you're asked to please disclose and refrain from discussion and vote. The meeting minutes we can't approve without a quorum, so under old business, let's bring the fire chief in.
Okay, so the last time I addressed the committee, I believe it was Kitty and some other members that asked for further information. So this is gonna be a heavy statistics, and I'm sorry, but this is how we determine the request that I made for the full-time firefighter. The first in your stapled packet is it's a spreadsheet, landscape. It's the range and fire rescue rank per NIFRS 2023. Rangeley is ranked 70th. Okay, sorry about that. Is ranked 70 overall out of, I believe it's 380 some odd fire departments in the state of Maine. I believe it was Kitty that requested this information. So I put our grouping together as best I could get the information together. Out of all that, you can really tell that our coverage area is quite significant. Do you have a question?
Yeah, well, just bringing it in, because, I mean, Shelley has talked quite a bit about the formula.
Yeah.
And does is square miles taken into consideration as to?
Can I lean on you on how the formula works?
Oh, no, square miles is not taken.
Okay, all right. Or like a given town and like the distance they are from you, and then the area that you need to cover.
I'll try to sum it up. I don't know if it's gonna answer your question. So obviously we take on, Rangeley is responsible for 22 towns and townships, and we do that through evaluation, population, and we build those unorganized territories, Rangeley Plantation. They all buy into that. Now, the fire department, regardless of the area that, say, Rangeley Plantation may exist in, we're still responsible for responding there. Whether it's a body of water, if it's land,
Right.
roadways, and that total is 648.42 square miles, and that includes bodies of water. So you hear me preach it all the time, range and fire is an all hazard department. We have boats, we have snowmobiles, ATVs, we're trained in high angle, low angle, all sorts of rescues. Probably doesn't answer your question.
It doesn't, but it may fit in a future discussion, Chief, just because I think what you and the town manager had mentioned is perhaps the formula needs to be looked at again.
The formula is out of date.
Yeah.
Now, with the formula, anybody watching me, and I might hear a bunch from Saddleback, but you bring larger commercial businesses in that are catering to a large amount of people that, I wouldn't say they're taxing our resources, but they're additional resources that we have to consider. Now, does the formula for Sandy River work right now? I'm not gonna say yes or no.
Yeah.
I think that'd be a bad political move for me, but can we all sit down and revisit it? Yes, I think we should. Things are changing. And then another note, I think when that formula was created, we were probably around 200 calls a year. We're now, steadily over 500 calls a year.
Where you brought up the square miles, I just wanted to interject that.
Yeah, no,
I didn't mean
go
to
ahead.
interrupt your presentation, but it was just,
Well, the
You know.
presentation is designed, if you have a question, please ask me in the moment, so we don't have to go back to it, because it's a lot. So basically, just broke it down, some other departments that are around us that may be full-time, whether they're full-time 24/7 or if they're full-time days. We see a lot of fire departments transition into the full-time chief first, a lot like what Rangeley did, move into another full-time firefighter and progress forward with, the change of communities and what have you. Do you want to get into the information here anymore, or?
yeah, I would go ahead. I mean, I think, we've got a couple of select board members present, which they may walk away with, with some questions as
Okay.
well, so.
So last year we had 508 calls, so we ranked 70th overall. We are full-time, but we're not 24/7 currently. We're Monday through Friday. We're gonna get into the specific days of the week here in the future. I believe Shelley brought up a question, if I have it correctly. A lot of these departments that are full-time have provided EMS at kind of a revenue-driven part of the town for the fire department. Does that make sense? Because EMS is revenue-driven. So these calls here do not include EMS. These are just straight fire calls. There's not much more to talk about here. If we compare ourselves to Lincoln Fire, I know well, they have 5 full-time firefighters on 24/7. It's a smaller community like us. They used to have a mill, they don't have it anymore, they're just kind of growing. I think Poland Springs went in there. Belfast is a tourist. Belfast, Bar Harbor, they're both very tourist driven.
Bridgeton as well.
Bridgeton, they only have a full-time chief that I'm aware of. Couldn't find much data for them. Bridgeton is also very close to a hub of other departments that can respond that are full-time. So that's a very tight mutual aid community. Yarmouth is obviously a tourist-driven community. And we've obviously become a tourist-driven community.
I think probably I consider Bridgeton my hometown.
Okay.
And I've seen it grow exponentially over the years. I mean, they've got, Dunkin' Donuts, Dollar General, Hannaford, and more coming. They're surrounded by much smaller towns, so the mutual aid piece is,
It's important.
yeah, I would, question that, but anyway. Yeah, I'm just surprised, Bridgeton is, they've got a ski mountain right in Bridgeton, they've got, as many lakes as we do, if not more, so, yeah, I'm just surprised that they
Well,
only have
it's
a full-time.
possible that data is not updated. So
Okay,
this is pulled off of a national database. It could be X amount of years old. It has to be updated by the chief.
okay,
So speaking of growth, some interesting growth statistics for the town of Rangeley. This year, permits were written for 61 new buildings, new residential dwellings, 6 commercial structures, 2 new subdivisions that include 36 units. So we're not getting smaller. It's just going to be more of a tax on public services, fire, police, and EMS.
Rangeley or the Rangeley area is.
This is Rangeley. This does not include the plantations. There were 61 new structures permitted this year, 44 last year. 6 subdivisions have been amended for new structures, 2 new subdivisions with 36 units. I believe they may actually be currently in the planning stage.
I was gonna say.
They've
okay,
got
I haven't
Hilltop Heights and some other ones. Hilltop Heights and the Ross Street. I think that's affordable housing.
Yeah, the cross street one.
So this is,
Those are
this
new.
town is growing.
Mhm. And you've got all kinds of colorful attachments.
This is
Chief.
going to be very hard to explain. The first sheet you have, it should be highlighted, should be end date 12/31/23. These are the statistics. Do you mind if I pace?
22,
Please do.
The statistics for last year.
for 2022, Chief, is the first.
23.
Right there.
Oh, okay, sorry about that, thank you.
So this is basically a year in a nutshell. So when we look at putting a per diem on for a special event, I look at this matrix. The blue boxes are read left to right. These are the peak times for a particular time frame. It's all military hours. So if you see down at 1900, there's a 3. That's 7 o'clock in the evening. We max out at 3 generally for the average for the whole year around that time. 3 calls per week on average. The red boxes are read by column, and those are the peak hours that we've had during that week for the entire year. So on Sunday, we peak out generally at 7 calls at 4 o'clock. Is that a lot to, it's a lot to,
It's easy to follow.
well, yeah, then you get into XY axis. So if you read the percentages on the far right, those are your percentages of how many calls we get during those particular hours.
Mhm.
On bottom, it's the day of the week percentages for the entire year.
Mhm.
So I look at the mid, say around 8 o'clock, you start coming out of the AM hours. Around 8 AM, you start hitting 9% of my fire calls are coming in, basically. The town's calls are coming in. And then as you go through the day, we start to lose, we start to slow down around 4, 5, probably the evening commute. And then we kind of slow down again until the next day. So that middle time frame is where we try to staff. Where we're staffing now is Monday through Friday, so we're missing the Saturday through Sunday. And you have several years worth of data goes backwards. Just so you can kind of see the trends are consistent year after year. Any questions about that? It's a lot to digest all at once.
Well, and it's good for us to just take away
Yes.
and look at. I
Yeah,
mean,
and then if you want to bring it down to a more simplified, the green graphs
Yeah,
are broken down with, you don't have the percentages there.
but these go back to what you gave us previously, Chief, so with the,
The green graph ones.
Yes.
But this is the deep dive into how those numbers are generated.
Mhm.
Oh, excuse me.
even, yeah, I mean, you even gave us the breakdown of the percentage calls per year on
You might
the,
have gotten that one by accident. Unless that was from a previous meeting.
it was from a previous
Okay.
meeting, yeah.
Right.
No, I'm just saying, this is,
Um,
we don't mind getting repeat info, it's all good.
So, and I believe it was either Shelley or Kitty also asked me, what percentage of those calls do we overlap or need more than one response on? So last year, 2023, we had 81 overlapping calls at 16%. That means more than 2 calls came in at one time or while we were on another emergency.
One call, 16%.
81, 16% overlapping. That's multiple calls at once. That could be 2 or 3 calls simultaneously. I didn't print this out for you guys. I'm sorry. I can leave it here if anybody wants to take it with you. In 2022, that number, we had 69 overlapping, 11.35. Now, a COVID year, when we were 2021, when we were still dealing with COVID, we had 14 overlapping. Well, not a lot of people out at that point, 3.46. But then 2020, As we were moving into COVID, we had 60 overlap. So that's 4 years worth of data. We've always kind of had those instances where we are overlapping, multiple calls are coming in. And we do our best to handle it. Where to next?
I have just sort of a general.
Yeah, go right
probably
ahead.
Shooting from the hip. Like
Yeah.
the, 2022 was the year with 608 calls, so it was like 500 the year prior to that.
Yeah.
2022 was 608, and then 2023 was back down around 508 or so. Anecdotally, any reason why there was just such a big jump up that year?
Yep, so we had a FEMA December storm. We had a big weather event. It generated, I believe it was 64 to 68 calls additional in the course of 2 days. So that's an anomaly. I can't take it out of the reporting, but that's where that came from. That's not an event that happens every year. What's that? It has been happening every year, but it's generally not normal.
Last year was two. 2 floods.
And I would stress that these are just emergencies. These are not what we're doing in the downtime. We're also doing insurance reviews where we actually go out in public. So these 60 some odd houses that are new, an insurance adjuster usually calls and asks us to go out and check for road widths, the whole 9 yards. And that's just not rangeland, that's the plantations, Sandy River, the plantations, unorganized townships. So we're dealing with insurance reviews.
Who is we? Is that you and the other?
And the daytime
firefighter?
firefighter, yeah,
That's
so.
Can
it
any,
might
of the
not-
can any of the volunteers do it, or is that all falling into?
No, we're both trained in Life Safety 101. It's an NFPA standard. Most of the maybe one other firefighter is trained in it. But then if we brought another firefighter in, we'd have to pay them. You know what I mean? Like if we brought like a per diem in. So whether we're both going out and doing that, or I'm going out and doing that, or he's going out and doing that. Recently, we have started receiving insurance challenges. The insurance challenge is an example of a homeowner purchasing a new house, whether it's in Sandy River or Dallas Plantation. They say to their insurance company that they are rated, they've heard they're rated at a 6 or a 7. The insurance company calls and basically challenges what the homeowner is saying. We've seen that a lot up near Saddleback, because they're rated at 10, they're having problems getting the insurance they need. So we deal with those challenges. Those are a little bit more time consuming. They really dig into what we have established for equipment, personnel, training, what our current ISO ratings are, our hydrant system. Oh, I'm drawing a blank. There's a lot with a challenge.
Which seems to be plantation specific.
It seems to be plantation specific. We've had a few in Rangeley. They usually are around commercial businesses. A lot of times, I believe I've done 2 in the past year or 2, and we ended up saving the commercial business money because they were misrated. We also do the inspections, liquor license inspections, courtesy, NFPA 101 inspections. We plan for events. If we have a storm, FEMA paperwork takes an extreme amount of time, years worth of headaches. We deal with that paperwork for the town. If there's money to be had out there, we do that research. We have the FEMA meetings, we do the FEMA paperwork, and trying to gain some of those resources back that the town has spent during storms. We are literally on the move every day. We're not sitting in the office watching TV. We're researching, we're training, we're preparing to train the call firefighters. It's nonstop. And then if we do have a fire call, depending on the severity of it, it could be anywhere from 5 minutes of paperwork to hours worth of documentation and looking into a vehicle accident, why it may have happened, partnering with the police department to get reports. So we are busy.
It all falls on you, the 2 of you.
The 2 of us, yeah. We've split the tasks, but that's again, we have some missing time and Saturday, Sunday. If you look at the numbers, we usually do get an increase Friday and call volume. But generally, from Sunday to Saturday, we're pretty steady. It's a busy, steady town. You know, we do slow down a little bit in March and April, it's mud season. But then after that, it's people are moving in town. And then you put the solar event on us and the craziness.
Lord,
has
huh?
You'll be able to see
just-
that day.
What's that?
You won't be able to see that.
It'll be
day.
probably foggy or cloudy, but that's a resource heavy event. DOT comes in and tells us we're gonna receive 20,000 vehicles through town. You know, we have to start staffing apparatus, we have to start worrying about choke points, all of that takes time and planning. Oh, excuse me.
Right. Any questions for the chief? All kinds of good info to digest.
But the call information by town was very telling, so.
It
There was
is.
some speculation that Sandy River Plantation was, gonna be, see a lot of calls there, and really don't.
It's pretty much, everybody is seeing the Airbnb influx, the housing influx, so it's remaining steady across the board, even keeled, if you will. We've also started tracking what we're doing on a daily basis because of the insurance, the influx in insurance calls that we're getting. We're starting to track those. We've never tracked them before because we were never inundated with them. But it's never been an issue, but they're coming in so frequently that we're starting to track those. And it's fun.
I have a question for you if I can.
Yeah,
So
no,
I
go right
would,
ahead.
know some of the on-call firefighters respect them for what they do for us. We've lost one who moved out of town. I'm trying not to use names here. I mean, he's pretty senior in the Aquasic area.
He's coming back per diem for a little while.
That's great.
Great. It seems maybe some others might be stepping back a little bit. Do you have concerns there with?
I do have concerns. So we're starting to see age-related step backs. And as firefighters, we need to be trained to save property and save life overall and property as well. And we're starting to see a little bit of step back in SCBA use. We've hit the ground trying to recruit, and we do have people that are interested in traffic control or other type fire pumps, driving the apparatus, pumping the apparatus. What we need are those air pack trained firefighters. This budget cycle we are putting together, we partnered with a media company that works with Saddleback to do a recruitment video. So we can try to recruit those people that are on social media sites, the younger generation, to become interested in our fire department, so we can train them to be we classify it as firefighter 2, those air pack trained interior firefighters. We haven't hit the danger zone yet, but we're dwindling. And it's not a Rangeley problem, it's a nationwide.
Chief, when you mentioned a few minutes ago, and I'm trying to recall what it was in relation to, but you said the calls were even keeled. Did you mean that they haven't changed much over the years with the different plantations and the volume?
No, to clarify, we're growing at the same pace as everybody around us. The plantations are also building, they're becoming busy, we're seeing Airbnbs there. Saddleback reopened, we're seeing the traffic there. It's just even keeled that we are seeing the same growth across the board. If we go back and look at the numbers that I gave you with the plan, town specific run numbers, they're pretty even, if you will. And then if you look at the reports that I just gave you for the breakdown for hours by day, by year, it's pretty steady. There's nothing that really stands out other than the large winter events, the storm events.
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just have a question. Regarding Saddleback, I know that a lot of municipalities that have a big volume, heavy use business in them tend to have a unique relationship with that particular business in terms of fire safety, because it does help their insurance rating as well. That, I mean, I think that the formula definitely needs to be looked at, but I wonder if it would be worth a discussion to extract Saddleback from that plantation and have a standalone conversation with them in terms of a contributor monetarily.
So, some discussions have occurred, and I'm not sure what I can actually say or what kind of confidence they were in. But I can tell you that Saddleback is aware of their insurance issues. And they are also aware that the town of Rangeley will not fund a firefighter to go up there, or, building of a station and or set equipment. But I think we're working through, and it's growing pains for Saddleback.
Right.
They're aware of it. They're trying to work with us to come up with solutions. So let's see what they come up with. But we can't fund building fire stations all over the plantations. There's a lot to be said. If you live within 7 miles of a fire station or within a hydrant district, your insurance for your protection ratings are great. But as you go further away, they get worse. And it would be a conversation to have with representatives from all the plantations to talk about what can we do to make their ratings more attractive? What can we do to save insurance premiums?
Thank you.
And Wendy asked a good question, and I think it reminds me of an earlier discussion that I'll try to put this tactfully, but I don't want the town of Rangeley to bear the brunt of or 48 or 50% of the cost to work on someone else's or to help someone else's more specific insurance needs. That's and this is my issue with the extra, I'm gonna be honest, with the extra firefighter chief, is that who are we bailing out? I mean, and it kind of goes back with, when you're involved with the budget process for a number of years and you are just gonna, and you see the amount of money that nonprofits request from the town of Rangeley and the pittance they request from the plantations. It's a tough one to swallow because our taxpayers just get walloped. And so that's where I'm coming from.
You're not bailing anybody out. We're not nonprofit at the fire department. We're municipally run.
Exactly.
And when we put a firefighter on, you're protecting your investment. You're protecting your protection rating with your premiums. You are protecting the commercial businesses downtown. Because if we do not start to increase and put firefighters on, our insurance rating will slide like Saddleback. And it's going to slide. You're going to feel it in your pocket. You're going to be paying more for premiums than you would for the additional mill rate for that firefighter. And Rangeley is unique. We're paying half that. And that is being passed on to the communities that we've taken on as business partners, basically, because they're buying a service. They expect a service from us. To be operationally ready for these plantations, just like buying new fire trucks, we have to grow. We have to grow with the plantations. We have to grow with Rangeley. And I would ask that the board put it forward to a vote. I think put it forward to a vote and let the community decide. I've been out there talking with commercial businesses, homeowners, and the protection ratings are slipping.
Yeah, I mean, well, just the natural, the weather phenomenons we've dealt with is, certainly doesn't help. But I just wanted, I liked Wendy's question, you know, a lot, and just, and it's come up before, you know, this isn't anything, you know, anything new or unique that we've discussed, and hence the, you know, the coverage area, you know,
It's hard to recognize when they're growing. And I'm seeing it within the numbers I print. I'm feeling it every day with the work that I'm doing.
mhm,
All I can do is make the recommendation that we look into the future and build and grow.
mhm. I appreciate it. Shelley?
So I have a question, like I mentioned before in one of our prior meetings, if I were to present and ask for an employee,
Mhm.
Where I work, I would have to justify it. And, with the numbers of, the volume that someone would do, responsibilities that those people would do, it's more of a sell. And I've preached so much about going to the plantations and presenting this to them too, so everyone is on board. I really don't like the fact that the cost for Rangeley is upfront and the plantations pay us a year after. And we don't charge them like any interest because it's like free money. And so I guess my thing is that, okay, so what does this new person look like? What is your intent for scheduling? What is, I mean, this part just gives the numbers and it says, just looking at this, it just said, call volume's the same. Roughly, I understand that there's some
I think you're
overlap.
missing some of the important information in the data.
Okay,
For scheduling wise, we would probably move to a 4 10-hour days. And that would allow the 2 firefighters to keep on rotating throughout the week, throughout the month, throughout the year. And then every day is covered the same.
okay. And then, so what does that do with you? Like,
I'm
talking like the whole department.
administrative, but like I told you at previous meetings, that the firefighter is the firefighter. He is the suppression firefighter for the town for that day. I go to back him up. And then in the office, I guess you can consider him backing me up with helping with paperwork. So I'm here to make sure the budgets are taken care of, the equipment is cared for. I'm his supervisor. I'm just making sure everything is taken care of. And you have the nice benefit that I like to fight fire too. So I am out there doing traffic control, I'm fighting the fires too, I'm doing what I can to help the town and the firefighters.
So this looks like you're basically working 7 days a week.
You know what, for added
I'm
benefit,
just
there
curious.
is one of the sheets there, the weekly or the yearly week by hour that I put in just for myself. And I am coming out on Saturdays, Sundays, the overnights. You guys are getting a hell of a deal on me because I am salary. I am putting in too much time for this town. I am not paid enough. And you would be lucky to find another fire chief like me if I do stick around. So.
That's the last exhibit.
What's that?
That's the last exhibit.
That is, and that's full transparency on how much I bust my ass here for this community that I love. And we've run the numbers. I know you're saying that they look even. They're not even. They've gone up. They're balanced out because we're growing with everybody. We need to recognize that, and we need to do something before it's too late. And if we look at NFPA, I'm drawing a blank, 1402, it would recommend that a rural fire department have 5 firefighter staff 24/7 at our volume. And I'm not asking for that, we're not there yet, but we need to start thinking about what the future means for Rachel.
Well, it doesn't look like many of the others are as well.
What's that?
No, it doesn't look like many of the others are NFPA
So,
following that recommendation either.
well, Herman, Union, Orrington, they're getting close. Lincoln Fire is, Farmington Fire is, I couldn't put another line in here, but Farmington Fire has full-time 24/7, and I believe they're 4 plus a per diem through the nighttime hours. And then as you go down through the 60s and stuff, you start to see where these departments are fully staffed.
Yeah, because it's according to call volume, you
Call
said,
volume,
right?
I try to put us closer to where we're growing, we're starting to move into the 60s, rank wise.
Are there any other questions for,
I have one, we're gonna turn to the chief, back to this formula. Who invented it? Who's responsible for it?
Goes back to the ages of time.
Was
No
it
one's
really?
ever
So it
Okay.
doesn't, I mean, I think so, I think some of the angst would go away. We have, you know, the call report was tremendous. It was, some back in the plantation up there, it was only 4% of our calls, right? But it's probably, you know, it's a little longer to get there. Does our formula probably needs to take into account travel time,
A distance
Time.
factor.
the distance factor,
Gas.
travel
The
time.
distance.
Readiness factor, we
Yeah,
just
I mean,
can't.
that's, you know, we're funding 48% of the overall costs. It's probably based more on volume. It doesn't take into account that you may be going an hour and a half out of town, right?
Right, and I would agree that the formula is that.
And
Yeah.
so, you know, maybe we adjust that.
And a ladder truck blew an engine when we first got it. Just saying.
No, I just, so who owns it? Do we own it with, do you own it?
the
Or
formula?
the formula, how it was,
I can answer that. Back in the early 2000s, we put this together.
Yeah.
We met with all the plantations, we sat down, many meetings, you were with us, Mark, right? Yeah. And we hashed out all the factors at that time that we thought were viable and came up with a formula, and I think it's been tweaked maybe once or twice since then.
Not much though.
Yeah.
what was driving it, primarily calls?
No,
The need for
calls
coverage.
weren't even a part of it. It was the population, the number of dwellings, and back then, it was before people rented places in the winter and stuff. Seasonal homes were a modifying factor for the 3 plantations because there were so many camps that only got used in the summertime, so that ended up
Right.
getting factored in the thing, so, I mean, it's at least 20 years old, and, you know, it was the first step forward, because we didn't have any way to share the cost before that formula. And, you know, at the time, it was a good thing, and, we had quarterly meetings with the plantations here coming up to it, so they were all on board when it passed.
Mhm.
And then, but it really hasn't,
It probably needs to be really.
it's been modernized since
And
then,
the
but
wet changes.
Yeah,
it
it
should
needs-
be.
needs to be
And
The school
I
even
believe
did
it
it.
should be expanded as well to a lot of these like nonprofits that Cindy mentioned, you know, that we pay 50,000 for the snow machine club plus excise taxes on this registration of it. And Rainbow Plantation pays $5,000, you know, that just seems completely out of whack to me when you drive through Rainbow Plantation to your snow machine trailer in, you know, half or 2/3 of the driveways in the winter.
And we did push for that way back when, for these organizations to do that. Some of them got on board for a little while, but
Yeah.
they kind of went by the
They
wayside.
didn't stick with it. Same thing, you know, Chamber of Commerce, all
Mm.
the, there's a few expensive donation things that I believe the town should apply the formula.
It needs to be workshopped.
Yeah.
And going back 20 years ago, also, you didn't have the training has changed, the equipment required has changed, NFPA standards have changed,
Mhm.
reporting has changed.
Mhm.
Reporting is new. Well, I don't know, maybe 8, 9 years, the first reporting.
Well, and you figure, Chief, I mean, you talk about the number of, simultaneous calls, and if you were just responding to Rangeley proper, no big deal. You're not, out on Bemis,
Well, a lot of the simultaneous calls came in Rangeley proper.
but I'm just saying that distance piece and stretching your resources. I mean,
It would be a different dynamic.
yeah.
If it was just Rangeley,
Mm.
we would be paying 100% of the fiscal budget. And teachers would have to do something, but
Mhm.
like I said, we're sharing a service. I think we're getting a pretty good deal.
Looks like we're 44% of the calls are sold between the Classic and Rangeley.
Mhm.
We're definitely carrying the plantations with this formula.
Mhm.
I
Yeah,
don't mean to take us on a rabbit hole, sorry.
yeah, no, it's,
That's a rabbit hole that will probably take a year in, workshops to figure out.
Wendy and then Mark.
Are there any examples, because we're designated as a service center for the plantations, are there any examples of shared expense scenarios that would kind of replicate what we have here? And I mean, and take into consideration that we're in the middle of nowhere.
We have looked, we're quite unique where we're covering 22 towns and townships.
Right.
There is one other department on here that, they may have been Limerick, don't quote me on that, is doing one other town.
Mhm.
And I do not know how they would share expenses.
What about Greenville? Are they,
Greenville,
we've always been compared to Greenville, whether it be the school or,
right, we actually, the Greenville fire position was actually modeled off of Rangeley. And their growth too, but they don't have near the coverage that we do, or the additional towns and townships.
but don't they have a large area like we do?
A lot of it's the lake. I can look into it, but I don't think they're as busy as we
Because you
are.
got Athens and you've got all the ones surrounding it.
Right, but I don't think they're covering those towns per se.
Oh.
Maybe Monson, but I don't know much about Greenville, other than
There's a big
having taught them there.
There too.
Mark, you had a question?
No, I was just gonna make a comment on the discussion that, we talked about, one thing on the call volume, and I'm not saying the responses are inappropriate or anything, I just want to point out that, they're different than they were 20 years ago, back when we had a part-time fire chief, on a volunteer crew. They didn't respond to trees on wires, they didn't turn out to every single fender bender, not as many people had, CO2 alarms and smoke alarms and things like that were hardwired to,
So
the circuit, so that's to me, a lot of the more adds to the call volume.
unfortunately, you can't get out of that either. So
And
once
that-
NIFRS reporting came along, there's about 400 types that we are required to respond to. That's why I've said it a few times, we're not a fire department, we're an all hazards department, because somebody has to respond to it. And that's gonna continue, that's part of the NIFRS reporting. You've got hundreds of codes of the responses that we do respond to. And that's a long discussion for another time if you're interested.
Well, I'm just curious, is there a breakdown of
Oh, yeah.
which ones the fire department goes to, which ones the police go to, which
Well,
ones the
obviously, we're not
ambulance
going
go to?
on police stuff, but, a sample of just the coding that we're required to respond to. I don't have this to give out, but, I mean, you're in the hundreds here. These are all different types of calls. Lock-ins, search for person on land, search for person in water. Then you get to your power line issues, your vehicle accidents, general cleanup, traffic control, aviation. Windstorm tornado assessments, special type of incidents, flooded basements, carbon monoxide, and these
And what triggers your responsibility for all of that?
911. So I
don't think a lot of people understand that.
it's a lot different than it was in the days of Rudy Davis, things like that, when you were just going on, the smoke investigations or the wildland fires or the structure fires. It's just increased all types of vehicle accidents, fuel spills, CO calls, and all the firefighters are trained in these emergencies.
All right, any other questions for the chief?
I'm gonna run.
All right, yes, go, I lost track of time. All right, thank you for all the information.
If there's any questions.
Thanks.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thanks.
All right. All right, continuing under old business, town manager updates. Joe, anything?
First thing, Madam Chair, is a worksheet that looks like this, there's 2 projects at the top. These are 2 projects that we talked about that began life on the transfers out that service page and now are going to live in the TIF projects warrant article. One is the Aquatic Park Phase 1 improvements, the low bid, which was accepted by the Board of Selectmen pending town meeting approval. That happened last night. It's 206,407 plus some extras there that I would recommend throwing in for construction services and a contingency. Totals 272,107.50. The other one is the Fish Screen boat launch. This has not been reviewed by the Board of Selectmen yet because the engineers working with the apparent low bidder to determine why that bid was $70,000 or $80,000 lower than the other bid. If you add these two lowest apparent bidders together, you come up with $491,149. The TIF project account balance $558,414. Subtract that out, and there'll be a balance of $65,000. I did run the numbers on the high bid, and if that ends up being the one that we have to take, ends up being the one that's left on the table, we could not do both projects out of what's in the project account.
Wouldn't be much of a difference, would it, Joe? 5 or 10,000?
No, it would be, it's pretty near 80,000, the difference. It's not on the
But
sheet.
you got a surplus of 65 in the TIF right now,
Right.
so another 5 or 10
Would make the difference, but that would be clumsy with the warrant article language. I'm not saying it's impossible, but we'd have to figure out how to craft the warrant article language to make that happen. Good point, though. It is only 15 or 20,000
Yeah,
at the high end. I'm not saying that's what's going to happen. I'm just disclosing that
right.
that's a possibility.
This is, yeah, you're
But
still
with-
looking at this for the.
With the two low apparent bidders,
Mhm.
it will fit in the TIF bucket.
Shelley?
So, with the contingency, what happens if it's not spent?
Then it does not get drawn out of the TIF project account.
What do you typically go for a percentage of the project?
It's typically around 10%. These numbers were, no, these are not 10%. These
Right.
numbers were the original contingency suggested by Wright Pierce on the original recommendation. Just to be safe. That's why I put them in there at that.
And are we
And
still
knowing-
planning the
oops, excuse me.
contingencies in case, I mean, the extra costs and stuff like that, like was previously done with like Allen Street and stuff like that?
It's very typical with construction projects to have contingency, try very hard.
No, I understand that, but I'm just saying, like, so are we still fighting a little bit to not, before we tend to be taken advantage of in some manner sometimes when, like, getting a bill on a road construction project and they went and did it before asking to have curbing removed and then sent a bill for $100 and some odd thousand.
Oh,
which was
change
considered
order.
a change order.
I'm not sure I understand the question, Madam Chair.
We fought a little bit for it and you were able to successfully not have to pay what they were originally
Oh,
asking.
absolutely.
Okay, that's
Rest
what I'm
assured
asking.
that I will
Yeah.
defend, have a duty to defend the town of Franklin, and I will continue
But
to
if,
do that,
but if
yes.
we move the contingency fund calculation here to 10%, the Boston Park project, then based upon whatever the recommendation the selectmen go for on the fish grade, move that to 10%. My guess is it's still not enough in the TIF to cover both projects.
Most likely.
Well, and then there's the additional TIF money that will be credited to this account in July, once the selectmen determine what the capture is when they set the mill rate. Does that work in arrears, or does that work for that works for the coming year, correct?
I wouldn't recommend using that in that capacity. I would want it to be in the, we'd have to collect those taxes.
Yeah, that does, makes sense. Okay, Joe, yeah, thank you.
Madam Chair,
Yes,
if you're not, if you don't have to utilize your contingency money that's there budgeted, does it dump right back into the TIF fund?
Madam Chair, would never leave it.
It would never leave it, yeah.
Oh, so you just wouldn't
Oh, okay,
extract
so
it,
it's just-
okay.
Yeah, so how
Right.
does that work when someone's voting on that tip and they think it's a certain dollar amount
Right.
and then it's not that dollar?
Right.
Yeah,
So
and, yeah,
the warrant article, which we have not completely drafted yet, I've given a couple of verbal first drafts, would be written so that the funds would be drawn from the TIF project.
Same
account.
thing, 'cause I gotta put it in writing on the warrant.
And
Yeah.
so, and these are two separate warrant articles, correct?
I would envision them to be two distinct warrant articles, and
Yeah.
that does a couple of things for voters. It lets them, A, authorize whether they want to expend TIF funds, and
Mhm.
simultaneously they will decide, do they want the project?
Right.
So they have to do both things to make it go.
Mhm.
So it really gives voters some power, as far as I'm concerned, which is good.
Yeah, it is.
And what's the projection for completion? Is it all gonna be done
We would hope,
within this half or the other half?
we would hope to have them done substantially complete by this fall. That is our goal. And when we opened bids, the Tarrant low bidder, and actually both bidders said that they thought they could do it in this year. The question that they asked that generated that conversation was, when do we start? And we reminded them that this is town meeting contingent,
Mm.
so you technically can't start until July 1-ish. So that gives them that window to fit that in and get it done, but we expect fall this year, if everything goes right.
Right,
Mhm.
so,
After fishing season for the boat ramp, how would they do that?
There is a specific timeline imposed by federal IFW and possibly Army Corps, but I know there are some environmental restrictions on when you can do it. I think it's July 1 to September 20th. It's in that time frame when you can work in the water. I think.
Makes sense.
that's.
I'd have to look it up to be sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
cause didn't we do the park one, wasn't that done in the spring?
They'll issue with clearance, you can do it at other times of the year. Depending on the conditions.
Alright.
Yes, go ahead, Shelley.
So how much are you proposing for TIF, pullback?
The capture percentage, we haven't
No.
even discussed that yet.
That'll be in July, right, Rebecca?
July.
Yeah.
They'll have they'll set the mill rate with the selectmen. And the assessor can present the scenarios.
Right. I just know they had mentioned before of not maybe going with 100%.
I think that's what we had,
That's my own.
Yeah, I think there's a general awareness now, Madam Chair, amongst board members that, they can choose a number less than 100% based on what's
I don't think
going on.
for this fast.
super. What else do you have for
I
town
do have
manager
some
updates?
other updates. Two of them, I believe. One of them, I'm just going to provide to you verbally at this point. The balance of the road construction loan is 142,206.33.
Mhm.
I've met with the road commissioner and we have 4 roads that we're going to put out for paving bids. One of them is Transfer Station Road, one is the top section of Center Street, one is Pond Street, one is Country Club Road. I think, based on what I've seen for estimates, 142 probably won't cover all of that, but that is what we're gonna put out to bid and see what we can do for the 142. So the approach is to spend the 142
Okay,
on those roads that are on the fire in this thing.
okay. So much for the thought to spend some of that on the egress for the transfer station.
So
That
the-
new, or are you using your crew for that?
So that's actually my third item for discussion. So just to clarify, one of the roads that we want to put out for paving bids is the Transfer Station Road, the paved road. The second item and I'll segue into the third topic. Second item, the transfer station that I had originally proposed to put out the bid was the egress road that would allow folks at the brush section to get out. There's a gate. Some folks may remember there's a second gate where the snowmobile trail used to go through. We want to modify that so that vehicles at the brush area can get out to Woodland Lake Road that way. And also there'll be kind of a T that would connect the paved transfer station road to that. My thought in talking with Public Works is that we can do that with our own forces. It may not all happen in the first year, but we can start plugging away at it with our own crews based on their availability. So that's kind of come off the table as a borrowing recommendation.
For the egress road.
Yeah, the the egress, we're gonna try to do that ourselves. So the transfer station, the scales are the remaining item. And talking with the engineer, it's about $180,000 purchase. I think, having thought about this for a while, I think I'm going to recommend that, we have, I think, 117,000 in transfer station reserve. And we have 50,000 suggested to be raised this year for the reserve. I think if you consider bumping that to 63,000, that gives us 180 in the bank for the scales. And then we know we've got that put away, whether they get put in this summer or next spring or next summer, we've got the money put away for the scales. So I think going that extra 13,000 on top of the 50 gets you the 180 in the bank, and you know, at least the scales are put aside, the money for that anyway. So that's my modified recommendation as opposed to borrowing to have that put out.
Is that in the,
No, that is not in your revised document because I just modified that recommendation about an hour and a half.
And it's a great recommendation, Joe.
Well, I think it meets some of the goals of the budget committee. I think the board will be pleased with it too when they see it, so.
you want to go scales?
I agree. I think it makes sense to have the money put aside. I will recommend to the board that they, have a workshop or some type of hearing about those prior to getting those, too far down that path. Having the money in the bank or in the reserve, I should say, is a good idea. So I think that covers the three things that I had pending for my portion.
So, Joe, do the scales kick out the landfill closing design that was earmarked for 25, 26, where you're, or do you just want to update this next year? I'm zero, so yeah, looks like that is the big one coming up in the transfer station 10-year capital plan. Landfill closing design for 38,000 for the following year.
What date?
So it's in, it's under 25, 20, year 25, 26.
Madam Chair, what is the production date for that? March 7th.
February 6th.
Oh, yes, 2624. I don't think we've gotten any others.
Yeah.
Standing by.
Yeah, we could omit that landfill closing design. Put a note in the comments, should we reevaluate the need? I believe it may be compliant as it is. I give you-
All right.
need to
I'm just gonna make
verify
a note. Okay, awesome. Thanks, Joe. All right, cool. Super.
On the one that I have, 37, clearly it's not the updated one you have. I have that in 26.
Okay,
So for this year, 24, 25, zero sort containers, which are in the budget, one of them 13,000. Scales and road widening, which is an amalgamated project, was 280, and now I'm saying, let's put another 13 on top of 50, and you'll end up with 180 in reserve to purchase the scale. And then wood waste traffic flow, which was
That's the egress.
anticipated to be 170 if done by others. Don't worry about that now, we do what we can in-house.
Yeah.
See where we land.
thank you for working so well with us on this. Just so the board of selectmen know, it was originally a $480,000 estimate to be incorporated into a new loan. So thank you so much, Joe.
You're welcome.
All right, anything else, Joe, for town manager component?
I think those are the big things. I do believe that Rebecca made all the corrections that I had asked for. in the body of the budget, there were some notes that we inserted, there were 3 or 4 of them. And then, of course, as you get into your items under my update, we want to check police and check those items
Mhm.
from the last meeting. So she updated all the numbers that you voted on have been updated. I checked those.
Yeah, thank you very much. All right, so continuing on with the agenda, we've already discussed fire rescue. Big thank you for the chief for all his work on that. The police department, like I said, we're not gonna vote on anything. We don't have a quorum. But the last point that was brought up at the last meeting is the vehicle rotation and the fact that capital plan shows a chief's vehicle being rotated out after 45,000 miles, and it's nothing that the budget committee, voted on or chimed in on. It was something that I brought up, that 45,000 miles is still pretty much a fairly new vehicle. I had mentioned that my husband, who worked for the Maine Warden Service, they would trade in their vehicles at 100,000 miles. And even later on, they increased it to 125,000 miles, as long as the repairs didn't make it, make it a cost prohibitive decision. So it would just be, it would just be my recommendation. It's open up for, disagree, or tell me please change my mind. But just to look at kicking some of these replacements out to well beyond 45,000 miles, that will affect the department reserve accounts, how much needs to be raised each year. So I just wanted to start some discussion on that. Because the chief's vehicle is slated to be replaced this coming year. It's a 2020 with 45,000 miles on it.
Yeah, Chair, I think that should be corrected, and that's not the committee's fault. It's mine, I didn't catch that. The 2017 is the one that should be replaced this year. 2020 should stick around a little bit longer, 28, 29-ish probably.
And so do we have the mileage for the 2017?
I don't have that with me.
Okay.
But I can just share my philosophy on this, especially with police cruisers, is they run, when that officer's on duty, they run a lot, especially in the winter time. So the engine hours are something that also should be factored in. And I think on the computers we can get the engine hours. And generally my philosophy is certain vehicles like the 2 aluminum F-150s out here, they have 40,000 miles on them. They get driven intermittently through the week. We can get 10 or 12 years out of those easy. It's something that's going high speed, running, idling a lot of the time. People are in and out of it all the time. And it's a more forward-facing vehicle too. It's kind of face of the community. I think it's good to have those rotated more frequently. Not that the public works trucks aren't the face of the community. Having a shock police car is probably a good idea.
It's worth exploring. Is there a policy for miles or engine hours?
I'm just gonna add to that because I know no matter what names on a cruiser that you see, their cars run 24 during their shift. So, I think that the mileage should be a trigger, like City said. Something happens and the expense of it is costing more to run and keep it on the road, then yes, I get it. Because there are some that they're having a hard time with the hybrids. But at the same time, typically, other departments go at least 100,000 for their vehicles. So, I just think that if you have something that you're selling with a low mileage, I don't think we need to keep doing. We ran into a problem before where we were just buying old stuff all the time, where it was something that was on the auction, where it was, and then we kept it as our piece until it started costing a lot of money. Then we started these 5-year leases going through, and unfortunately now, just to change our fleet and to get them all the same type of vehicle and stuff, and now it's like of the norm to trade it in every 5 years. I mean, you have taxpayers that can't trade their car in every 5 years. So I think that we should look at it as the age of the vehicle, what the wear and tear is on it, but like I said, AC's running all day or the heater's running on the winter, so it's the same for.
It's with any, with any department, no. Again, so I'm just gonna defer back to what I know, and that is, my husband driving, a state, a taxpayer-owned truck, first responder, off-road, sometimes high speed, and he had miles and miles and miles to cover. And the state extended the rotation, for the sake of the taxpayers. I would just ask that the town look at that as well.
You said it's 2017, right now, yeah. not-
Correct.
yeah.
And I still question whether that's too soon.
What's the engine hours and miles?
Well, again, I mean, we don't have a policy, and maybe this doesn't fit into a cookie cutter policy, I don't know, but I just would like that. I just wanted to state it publicly and have that looked at as far as the capital plan and the need for, and perhaps looking at decreasing the reserve account requests if it's even possible. But the reserve account requests, they're 400,000 this year, I think, 405. So the reserve accounts are significant. Anything else under police that were lingering questions? Again, I know that Kitty had some questions. She's not here. Colin may have raised one or two, but anything with the board, Jimmy or Wendy, do you have anything at this point?
No, I was just looking at police cars, actually.
Okay.
It says police cars up to 10 years and 250,000 miles, which I don't believe. But then it says state and sheriff fall into this, and locals about 5 to 7 years up to 140,000 miles. So it probably has, especially up here, it depends on the miles, But I mean, 5 to 7 years is close to what you have here, maybe so 17. Yeah, I mean, that's within that framework. But I would do a mechanical assessment,
Yeah,
and just see what's up with the vehicle,
exactly.
right?
And that's kind of where, that was, part of my premise. Thanks for taking the time to look that up, Wendy. It's very helpful, and to factor in the mileage and, how it's holding up.
And the people that operate the vehicles know what's wrong with them because they're in them all the time, and we've all had them. Sometimes you have a car that is just a bad car.
Yes. Bad car. Thank you, Mike.
And that's what they used to have to present.
Right.
And
Here's
say,
my new bad car.
this is how much it's costing in the shop because it's in so much. And that's
I
how
think-
we've done it.
I had a question, just a general overarching question about the body of work that this committee does in terms of being strategic about where you are with putting money back into reserve, is there, maybe you know better, Joe, like, is there a percentage by department that you try to aim for, or do you ever go back and, mitigate taxes because maybe a particular department just didn't utilize the budget that was allocated?
So with reserve is typically tied to this,
Mhm.
what's coming up, and what has been taken out of it. It's not a very scientific thing, it's really more, looking at what's happened and what we're anticipating purchasing and balancing out what's historically happened, so there aren't spikes or valleys, because it's hard to go from 0 one year back to 50 the next year, so it's about keeping kind of a constant amount if we can in each reserve account.
And once the money is in the reserve account, it can't be used to offset taxes. I mean,
Oh, it's in
This-
their plan.
it's in there. You as the select board have to approve, in your, it's added to your agenda when Joe wishes to pull something from reserve so once it's in, it's in.
Town meeting has specified
yes.
it can only be used for those purposes.
Mhm.
So if it's highway, it can only be used for highway
Gotcha,
purposes.
gotcha.
If it's for an airport, it can only be.
But then the operating budgets of the departments, if they haven't utilized that funding for that particular year, does it roll over? I don't think it does.
No.
now.
It can, well,
Municipally?
it can, depending on what it is. So if there's an unfinished project, there could be, it requires action of the board and selectmen to carry it forward. Rebecca knows it. I'm not a fan of that because you got to track it very carefully, you gotta
right.
make sure that everybody knows, and then you got to remember to do it. We have one going on right now with the planning from last year that's still there that we need to make sure we're tracking. There are certain categories that you don't want to do that with.
Right.
Payroll is one of them.
Sure.
It's-
Oh,
It's
yeah.
gotta be something that's like a project that's been started and needs to be completed. Generally speaking.
So pretty much we start from 0
Right.
every year.
Love it.
And, whatever isn't spent is in the undesignated fund balance, and Rebecca looks at that, and the town manager and the audit will indicate what's,
And the auditor, Madam Chair, did mention that last night when he was here, so
Right.
Rangeley it's consistent with what's happened here in the last several years, is that we have positions we haven't been able to fill, but we raised the money anticipating that we're going to be able to do that. Mechanic, for instance, which, bad example because it is filled by someone else, but that money that position had is still there, so we want to have those employees, so we
Right.
continue to put that in there, but and what that does is it drops to surplus at the end of the year. It can be used by vote of town meeting to lower taxes next year.
any other questions before I go to Mark? Mark?
So those undesignated funds, is that what Wendy's asking? How can they make it back into the yearly town budget so they don't have to be re-raised through taxation?
It's,
Yeah.
yeah.
Generally, I didn't phrase it quite that way. I probably should have, but really, I'm just thinking, gosh, if we didn't utilize the budget, maybe mitigate the tax
So what's the
bill.
mechanism for that?
Well, Madam Chair, I
Fund
think
balance
just kind
policy.
of explain that it would, if it's not spent, it would drop to general reserve surplus, I call it.
Right,
And then town meeting
they
can
vote.
vote to assign that or utilize that is the word you ought to lower taxes. And Rangeley does that consistently.
So our undesignated fund balance policy prevents us from over-saving, for lack of a better word, so we don't harbor too much money. That the undesignated fund balance policy forces us to bring the excess funds forward to help mitigate taxes.
Right. And as we move into more of an investment environment, through whatever vehicle we figure out, that could change that, scenario a little bit in the future, not this year, but.
Mark, you had something else?
Oh, I'm just trying to understand this because I really don't have a good handle on it. All the money that we have in Franklin Savings Bank, that the town has in Franklin Savings Bank right now, how much of that is undesignated?
It's probably in the audit. Is that what you go by, Joe, is what the pre, you've,
We haven't ended this year yet, though, either. you know, so
correct,
Fiscal year.
but, and we haven't, I haven't looked at the audit, the select board just got it last night as well, so, that's the answer at the moment.
That's based on the audit to confirm all the numbers
From the
which
previous
we've
year.
presented. Right, so technically Trio will have that amount year to date each time, correct?
So the audited fund
As long
balance
as the
happens,
balance is,
that happens once a
it's
year.
budgeted each month.
You can plus and minus from that and check on it periodically, yes.
Right.
And the audited balances comes with the audit, from the audit.
Mark?
And this may be off subject, I'm not sure, but at the Board of Selectmen's meetings, they're talking about investing the money and stuff like that, so roughly they got like $9 million in there right now, and the question popped in my head, I understand you need 3 months of operating expenses in there all the time and stuff, but the $9 million just seemed like a lot to me. I wondered how the town ended up with $9 million in there. Is it through extreme efficiencies of town government, or overtaxation, or it got raised and then projects weren't completed,
That's probably a better question for the select board.
Okay. And what options there are, if
Yeah,
can any of that be, if it turns out it was through overtaxation, is there a mechanism that can be, those funds can be brought back to help lower balance out taxation?
the fund balance policy allows for a range. It's not a solid 3 months, it's a range. And fortunately, the town, Joe's mentioned before, the town has a great history of tax collection. It's not like we've got a big corporation that is taxed heavily that we rely on for, good cash flow. It's all, homeowners and business owners primarily. But I think that's a really good question for the select board, probably not the budget committee.
Okay,
But, it segued into your question, but it's really not a budget committee question.
okay, Wendy's question just got me thinking
Yeah,
about it there,
sorry.
so she can take mine forward to the.
Yeah.
The rabbit hole.
Yeah, so anyway, so I think, got a lot of segues off that one, which is all good. So I don't think there's anything more on police. I think we're looking at vehicle replacement and how that may affect the reserve account and how much needs to be collected even this year for police department reserves. Next, the transfers out or the debt fund. So that was a big correction, so that now doesn't reflect any of the former itemized projects, which is in our old 65, 28, 29, and 30. They are just removed. That is. Anything else to add to that, Joe? I really oversimplified that, but much.
Now, those projects I spoke about earlier will be reflected in TIF warrant articles. And the increase, if it is acceptable, to increase the transfer station reserve by 13,000. That's something we'll have to track back to cover that if there's interest in it. And the police was one of those numbers that Rebecca updated for us, so that reflects your motion at the last time we met. That's in the body of the budget.
And we'll just have to convene another, budget committee meeting with, when a quorum is present to. And this is, this is a lot of information we got today from Chief. We got minutes, so that will all be carried forward to the next agenda. So any questions on transfers? out, or the debt fund, which is on page 90. Oh, page 90, page 90. New business. Do you have any new business, Joe?
I do, but it's related to calendar, but not your calendar, so I guess I can say it here. The board of selectmen will meet on the 25th, which is next Monday at 6, for the purpose of reviewing the budget. That's a public meeting. They have called the first public hearing for the 27th, which is next Wednesday. That will occur at 6 o'clock in Wausau at the Wausau Station, Fire Station. So the way
What time is
that
that again, sorry? 6.
6 P, I believe it's 6 PM on the 27th. I know it's the 27th.
Didn't you guys do?
25th was 6, the 27th was 5.
So it's 5 o'clock.
I think it was, yeah,
27th.
99% sure.
It's the 27th of March. That's the Wednesday, right? And 6 o'clock at the Aquastic Fire Station. Right.
Wednesday you had?
27th? We're in 2024.
All together.
And then you have them on the 25th.
Yeah, the 25th.
I've got it down for 5:30 on the 27th.
Yeah.
I remember 5:30.
Yeah. Okay, yeah.
Wendy, 5:30.
Oh, is it 5:30? Okay, sorry, yeah,
Yeah, that's right,
5:30 on the
5:30.
25th.
25th is 6 o'clock.
Okay.
27th is 5:30.
5:30.
We really need to go.
I don't know, I'm just gonna come at 5 those days. You might be waiting a while.
Okay, so the selectmen are meeting for a regular budget discussion. As the Board of Selectmen to review the budget at 6 PM on March 25th, here in the meeting room. And then the Board of Selectmen have scheduled a public hearing on the budget, the first public hearing on the 27th at 5:30. And the Budget Committee should be there as well, to the best extent we can, just in case the Select Board has a different recommendation than the Budget Committee. We just need to be there to answer questions and to take feedback in case we want to change our minds on recommendations.
One other thing that I would like to add is the most current version of this will be uploaded to our website for the public to prepare themselves in advance of that public hearing.
Okay.
This is on, it's also available to purchase here at the town office if anybody's interested. A paper copy, but it will be posted publicly and then we'll post updates. So if the board makes any updates at their next meeting, it'll be on the website. So that anybody interested can follow along prior to arriving at the town public hearing at 5:30 on the 27th.
Madam Chair, do we have a, like a cover letter that shows, it's almost like Excel track changes or accounting track changes, like what was suggested and what your suggestions were, just so we can see, where you spent your time and activity, so we can, and there might be some, I've watched a lot of your meetings, but I might have missed something,
Yeah, as far as tracking changes, what you see in the 2025 committee column on the far left would be our latest votes and
So you're just
approvals.
updating this document, and I have the oldest version of it, okay, so we'll just get that online,
319.
Yeah. And,
Madam Chair.
yes, Mark.
And Joe was mentioning about downloading that and it being available to purchase. What do you think about having one printed copy on the front counter that a member of the public could come in and look at on site? Is that too much for the taxpayers to ask, to be a printed copy for public review at the town office?
I think we can answer that.
Yeah, I think that's a town manager question, and I'd be
Yeah,
happy to leave this at the front counter.
Right, so there will be a copy available for the public at the front counter. So we need a budget committee meeting, and perhaps there should just be an email sent out because we've got Colin not here, Kitty isn't here. So maybe scheduling our next meeting. Does anyone, Jim, have you got anything coming up that just would not work for next week or? Monday and Wednesday are already taken. Really only leaves Tuesday or Thursday. There are religious services on Thursdays, on Thursday of next week, which yeah, may not work for a couple of us. Tuesday works, it works for me. Shelley? Okay. Can, yeah, so do you mind sending out an email asking if Tuesday would be okay?
Sure.
Include all, Colin and Kitty as well. All right, so we'll tentatively.
Is there a meeting in this room?
Tuesday, the 26th.
You trying to look, see if there's something on.
I'm trying, I can't see it.
I don't see anything. I don't understand the system.
There's nothing on the 26th, Joe.
All right, so the budget committee tentatively has a meeting scheduled for the 26th, which is a Tuesday.
At 6.
6 tends to be great if we could move it up an hour, but I'm not sure that works for everyone's schedule, so. Okay, Colin has, okay, so let's say 6 o'clock then. So that's calendar. Next up is a motion to adjourn. Oh, we can't make a motion to adjourn. Okay,
Doesn't move the state.
no, we'll just call us out at 7:29. Good call there, Jim, as far as, yeah. So just, great.
Well, it's just.
Thank you much.
Yeah,
not fun.
Trying to fight it. You're right. Good night, all.
Have a good night, Jim. Two Jims. Have a good night.